All right, it is coming up on 8 o'clock, so let's get settled, get comfortable, grab our books, grab a drink, and jump back in where we left off. Welcome back. This is our second night, and it should be the last, of reading Beowulf, the epic poem of, they call it Anglo-Saxon, they call it European, they call it Nordic descent. It's got so many different descents. It's an old Western and epic poem. So, last night we got through the beginnings of things and saw some of the high points of the story, the parts that most people will know and remember. The coming of Beowulf and the clash with Grendel. And then we get into the parts that are a little bit more suspect. We've seen the introduction of Grendel's mother, who has been adapted in interesting ways in the past. Let's continue on tonight and see what the original intent was. Less Angelina Jolie, more fearsome monster, I'm thinking. But we'll see. We'll see. So, we do have a fair bit ahead of us tonight. We got through just about half last night, so we don't have a whole lot of time to play with. We'll still have some time for commentary and a little bit of off-the-cuff yapping as we need, but let's try and keep kind of on task at least. So, let's resume where we left off and pick up from part 22 of Beowulf. Beowulf seeks Grendel's mother. Beowulf answered Ecgtheow's son, "Grieve not, O wise one, for each it is better. His friend who avenged then with vehemence wail him. Each of us must the end day abide of his earthly existence, who is able accomplish glory ere death. To battle thane noble lifeless lying, 'tis at last most fitting. Arise, O king, quick, let us hasten to look at the footprint of the kinsman of Grendel. I promise thee this now, to his place he'll escape not, to embrace of the earth, nor to mountainous forest, nor to depths of the ocean, wherever he wanders. Practice thou now patient endurance of each of thy sorrows, as I hope for thee soothly." Then up sprang the old one, the all-wielder thanked he, ruler almighty, that the man had outspoken. Then for Hrothgar a war-horse was decked with a bridle. Curly-maned courser, the clever folk leader, stately proceeded, stepped then an earl troop of linden wood-bearers. Her footprints were seen then, widely in wood paths. Her way o'er the bottoms, where she far away fared o'er fen country murky, bore away breathless the best of retainers, who pondered with Hrothgar the welfare of country. The son of the Aethelings then went o'er the stony, declivitous cliffs, the close-covered passes, narrow passages, paths unfrequented, nesses abrupt, nicker haunts many. One of a few of wise-mooted heroes, he onward advanced to view the surroundings, till he found unawares woods of the mountain, o'er hoar-stones hanging, Holtwood unjoyful. The waters stood under, welling and gory. 'Twas irksome in spirit to all of the Danemen, friends of the Scyldings, to many a liegeman. Sad to be suffered, a sorrow unlittle, to each of the earlmen, that when to Esher's head they came to a cliff. The current was seething, with blood and with gore the troopers gazed on it. The horn anon sang, the battle song ready, the troop were all seated. They saw along the weather then many a serpent, mere dragons wondrous, trying the water's nickers a-lying on the cliffs of the nesses, which at noonday full often go on the sea-deeps their sorrowful journey. Wild beasts and worm-kind, away then they hastened, hot-mooded, hateful, they heard the great clamour, the war-trumpet winding, one did the great prince sunder from earth joys with arrow from bowstring. From his sea struggle tore him, that the trusty war missile pierced to his vitals. He proved in the currents less doughty at swimming, whom death had oft carried. Soon in the waters the wonderful swimmer was straitened most sorely with sword-pointed boar spears. Pressed in the battle and pulled to the cliff edge, the liegeman then looked on the loath-fashioned stranger. Beowulf donned then his battle equipments, cared little for life, inlaid and most ample, the hand-woven corslet which could cover his body. Must the wave deeps explore, that war might be powerless to harm the great hero, and the hating one's grasp might not peril his safety. His head was protected by the light flashing helmet that should mix with the bottoms, trying the eddies, treasure emblazoned, encircled with jewels. As in seasons long past, the weaponsmith worked it, wondrously made it, with swine bodies fashioned it, that henceforward no longer brand might bite it, and battle sword hurt it, and that was not least of helpers in prowess, that Hrothgar's spokesman had lent him when straitened, and the hilted hand sword was fronting entitled. Old and most excellent among all the treasures, its blade was of iron, blotted with poison, hardened with gore, it failed not in battle. Any hero under heaven in hand who it brandished, who ventured to take the terrible journeys, the battlefield sought not the earliest occasion, that deeds of daring 'twas destined to accomplish. Eglaf's kinsman minded not soothly, exulting in strength what erst he had spoken, drunken with wine when the weapon he lent to a sword hero bolder, himself did not venture, neath the strife of the currents, his life to endanger. The famed deeds performed, there he forfeited glory. Repute for his strength, not so with the other, when he, clad in his corslet, had equipped him for battle. So that was a lot going on in that part. The story is moving along very, very quickly through here. In short, that was Hrothgar was feeling pretty down. His retainer had been killed, and they were wondering who and how and why. But Beowulf said, "You know what? No, chin up. We're gonna go. You and me, let's go." And so they went. They found out the trail. They tracked her down, and near Grendel's mother's lair, there were sea monsters that they killed with an arrow, and it swam much less skillfully once the sea monster was dead. Funny how that works. And again, the naysayer from Hrothgar's hall, Unferth, is looking on and realizing that, you know what, maybe Beowulf is a little bit bigger and beefier than I am after all. Okay. Continuing on with part 23. Beowulf's fight with Grendel's mother. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's son, "Recall now, O famous kinsman of Healfdene, prince very prudent. Now to part I am ready, gold friend of Earlman, what erst we agreed on. Should I lay down my life in lending thee assistance, when my earth joys were over, thou wouldst evermore serve me, instead of a father, my faithful thaneman. My trusty retainers protect thou and care for. Fall I in battle, and Hrothgar beloved, send to Higelac the high-valued jewels thou to me hast allotted. The Lord of Geatman may perceive from the gold that Hraethling may see it. When he looks on the jewels that a gem-giver found, I, good over measure, enjoyed him while able. And the ancient heirloom Unferth permit thou, the famed one to have, the heavy sword splendid. The hard-edged weapon that with fronting to aid me, I shall gain me glory, or grim death shall take me." The Atheling of Geatman uttered these words, and the heroic did hasten. Not any rejoinder was willing to wait for. The wave-current swallowed the doughty in battle, then a day's length elapsed, ere he was able to see the sea at its bottom. Early she found then, who 50 of winters the course of the currents kept in her fury, grisly and greedy, that the grim one's dominion some one of men from above was exploring. Forth did she grab then, grappled with the warrior, with horrible clutches, yet no sooner she injured his body unscathed, the byrnie outguarded, that she proved but powerless to pierce through the armor. The limb-mail locked with loath-grabbing fingers, the sea-wolf bare then, when bottomward came she, the ring-prince homeward, that he after was powerless. He had daring to do it, to deal with his weapons, but many a mere beast tormented him swimming. Flood beasts no few, with fierce biting tusks, did break through his byrnie. The brave one pursued they. The earl then discovered he was down in some cavern, where no water whatever anywise harmed him, and the clutch of the current could not anear him. Since the roofed hall prevented, brightness a-gleaming, firelight he saw, flashing resplendent. The good one saw then the sea-bottom's monster, the mighty mare woman. He made a great onset with weapon of battle. His hand not desisted from striking that war blade struck on her head, and a battle song greedy. The stranger perceived then the sword would not bite, her life would not injure, but the falcon failed the folk prince then straightened. When straightened, erst had it often on sets encountered, oft cloven the helmet, the fated one's armor. 'Twas the first time that ever the excellent jewel had failed of its fame, firm-mooded after. Not heedless of valor, but mindful of glory, was Hygelac's kinsman, the hero chief angry. Cast then his carved sword, covered with jewels, that it lay on the earth, hard and steel-pointed. He hoped in his strength, his hand-grapple sturdy, so any must act whenever he thinketh, to gain him in battle glory unending. And as reckless of living, the lord of the war-geats, she shrank not from battle. Seized by the shoulder the mother of Grendel, then mighty in struggle, swung he his enemy, since his anger was kindled, that she fell to the floor with furious grapple. She gave him requital early thereafter, and stretched out to grab him, the strongest of warriors. Faint-mooded stumbled till he fell in his traces. Foot-going champion, then she sat on the hall guest and wielded her war-knife wide-bladed, flashing, for her son would take vengeance, her only bairn. His breast armor woven bowed on his shoulder, it guarded his life, the entrance defended. 'Gainst sword-point and edges Ecgtheow's son there had fatally journeyed, champion of Geatmen. In the arms of the ocean had the armor not given close-woven corslet, comfort and succor. And had God most holy not awarded the victory, all-knowing Lord easily did heaven's ruler most righteous arrange it with justice. Up rose he erect, ready for battle. Alright, that's the end of part 23. So, Beowulf found himself at the bottom of the sea, having swum down, fully armed and armored, came to a cave that was somehow a little pocket of air, and that's where Grendel's mother lives. And they got to fighting, and you know what? Grendel's mother, a fair bit of a better fighter than Grendel himself. Beowulf found pretty quickly that she had the same sort of charm against any sort of weapons. The famous heroic sword didn't do jack shit when he hit her with it. So he went to wrestling, and she actually tripped him up. But he actually wore his armor this time, not going naked against a beast like he did against Grendel. So when she tried to stab him, it didn't do any good. And then there is some unfortunate phrasing there at the end that may be where we came to a lot of the choices made with the adaptations. Because there she is straddling him, and they had to have chosen explicitly, up rose he erect, ready for battle. Yes, that was a choice. Not the choice that I would have made, but that was a choice. Alright, let's continue. Part 24. Beowulf is double conqueror. Then he saw amid the war gems a weapon of victory, an ancient giant sword, of edges a doughty. Glory of warriors, of weapons 'twas choicest, only 'twas larger than any man else was able to bear to the battle encounter. The good and splendid work of the giants. He grasped then the sword hilt, knight of the Scyldings, bold and battle grim, brandished his ring sword, hopeless of living, hotly he smote her. Wink, wink. That the fiend woman's neck firmly it grappled, broke through her bone joints, the bill fully pierced her. Fate cursed body, she fell to the ground then. Okay, so actually fighting. The hand sword was bloody, the hero exulted, the brand was brilliant. Brightly it glimmered, just as from heaven gem-like shineth this torch of the firmament. He glanced along the building, and turned by the wall then, Hygelac vassal, raging and wrathful, raised his battle sword, strong by the handle. The edge was not useless to the hero in battle, but he speedily wished to give Grendel requital for the many assaults he had worked on the West Danes, not once but often. When he slew in slumber the subjects of Hrothgar, swallowed down 15 sleeping retainers of the folk of the Danemen, and fully as many carried away a horrible prey. He gave him requital, grim raging champion, when he saw on his rest place, weary of conflict, Grendel lying of life joys bereaved. As the battle at Harrow erstwhile had scathed him, his body had far bounded, a blow when he suffered, death having seized him, sword smiting heavy, and he cut off the head then. Early this noticed, the clever carles who as comrades of Hrothgar gazed on the sea deeps, that the surging wave currents were mightily mingled, the mare flood was gory. Of the good one the grey-haired together held converse, the hoary of head, that they hoped not to see again the atheling ever, that exulting in victory he'd return there to visit the distinguished folk ruler. Then many concluded the mare wolf had killed him. The 9th hour came then, from the ness edge departed, the bold mooded Scyldings, the gold friend of heroes, homeward betook him. The strangers sat down then, soul sick, sorrowful, the sea waves regarding. They wished, and yet weened not their well-loved friend lord to see any more. The sword blade began then, the blood having touched it, contracting and shriveling with battle icicles. 'Twas a wonderful marvel, that it melted entirely, like as to ice, when the Father unbindeth the bond of the frost, and unwindeth the wave bands. He who wieldeth dominion of times and of tides, a truth-firm creator, nor took he of jewels more in the dwelling, lord of the waders, though they lay all around him. Then the head and the handle handsome with jewels, the brand early melted, burnt was the weapon. So hot was the blood, the strange spirit poisonous, that in it did perish. He early swam off then, who had bided in combat the carnage of haters, went up through the ocean, the eddies were cleansed, the spacious expanses, when the spirit from far land, his life put aside in this short-lived existence, the seaman's defender came swimming to land then. Doughty of spirit, rejoiced in his sea gift, the bulky burden which he bore in his keeping. The excellent vassals advanced then to meet him. To God they were grateful, were glad in their chieftain, that to see him safe and sound was granted them. From the high-minded hero, then helmet and byrnie were speedily loosened. The ocean was putrid, the water neath welkin weltered with gore. Forth did they fare, then their footsteps retracing, merry and merciful, measured the earthway. The highway familiar, men very daring, bare then the head from the sea-cliff burdening, each of the earlmen, excellent valiant. 4 of them had to carry with labor the head of Grendel to the high towering gold hall. upstruck on the spear, till 14 most valiant and battle-brave gatemen came there going, straight to the palace, the prince of the people, measured the meadways, their mood-brave companion. The atheling of earlmen entered the building. Indeed, valiant man, adorned with distinction, doughty shield warrior to address King Hrothgar. Then, hung by the hair, the head of Grendel was borne to the building, where beer thanes were drinking. Loth before earlmen and eke for the lady, the warriors beheld then a wonderful sight. It's the end of part 24 there. So, Beowulf found a sword that was sized for giants, huge, at the bottom of the cave there, and with it struck off Grendel's mother's head, or killed her. And as he was looking around, he found Grendel's body, who had made it back home to Mama, only to bleed out from, a torn-off arm. Tends to do that to you, especially if you've gone swimming through the ocean with an open wound. I'm sure that was a very fun flight. So, as he saw Grendel, his whole reason for having been out to help Hrothgar in the first place, used the sword to lop off Grendel's head, and the foul blood melted the sword. So he left the cave at the bottom of the sea with only Grendel's head and the handle of the huge sword. But all the while, Hrothgar and his men had thought, there's no way he's coming back from that. The waters, it's too much. They must have killed each other at the bottom. So he went off home. But his own men, Beowulf's bros, were waiting. They knew he was going to make it. And so it took 4 of them to carry Grendel's head back. Because, Beowulf himself is so beefy he can do it himself. But the rest of them, the baby bros, needed to team up there, bear the load. So they brought it back and have trophies to show to Hrothgar that, what? We're all good now. We're all set. Alright, part 25. Beowulf brings his trophies. Hrothgar's gratitude. Beowulf spake, offspring of Ecgtheow. Lo, we blithely have brought thee, bairn of Healfdene, prince of the Scyldings, these presents from ocean, which thine eye looketh on, for an emblem of glory. I came off alive from this narrowly escaping, in war 'neath the water, the work with great pains I performed. And the fight had been finished quite nearly, had God not defended me. I failed in the battle, aught to accomplish, aided by Hrunting. Yes, indeed, they have the favor of Broden, the All-Spotter. Though that weapon was worthy, but the wielder of Earthfolk gave me willingly to see on the wall a heavy old hand-sword hanging in splendor. He guided most often the lorn and the friendless, that I swung as a weapon. The wards of the house then I killed in the conflict, when occasion was given me. Then the battle-sword burned, the brand that was lifted, as the blood-current sprang, hottest of war-sweats. Seizing the hilt from my foes, I off-bore it. I avenged, as I ought to their acts of malignity, the murder of Danemen. I then make thee this promise, thou'lt be able in Heorot careless to slumber, with thy throng of heroes and the thanes of thy people, every and each of greater and lesser. And thou needest not fear for them from the self-same direction, as thou formerly fearedst, O folklord of Scyldings. End day for earlmen. To the age-hoary man, then, the grey-haired chieftain, the gold-fashioned sword-hilt. Old work of giants was thereupon given. Since the fall of the fiends it fell to the keeping of the wielder of Danemen. The wonder-smith's labour and the bad-mooted being abandoned this world then. Opponent of God, victim of murder, and also his mother, It went to the keeping of the best of the world kings where waters encircle. Who the Scot divided in Silding dominion, Hrothgar discoursed, the hilt he regarded. The ancient heirloom were in old times contention, beginning was graven. The gurgling currents, the flood slew thereafter the race of the giants. They had proved themselves daring, that people was loth to the Lord everlasting. Through lash of the billows, the Father gave them final requital. So, in letters of rune on the clasp of the handle, gleaming and golden, 'twas graven exactly. Set forth and said, whom that sword had been made for, finest of irons, who first it was wrought for. Wreathed at its handle and gleaming with serpents, the wise one then said, silent they all were, son of the Healfdene, he may say unrefuted, who performs mid the folkmen fairness and truth. The hoary old ruler remembers the past. Then better by birth is this bairn of the nobles. Thy fame is extended through far-away countries, good friend Beowulf, o'er all of the races. Thou holdest all firmly, hero-like strength, with prudence of spirit. I'll prove myself grateful, as before we agreed on. Thou granted for long shalt become a great comfort to kinsmen and comrades. A help unto heroes Hermod became not. Such to the Sildings, successors to Gueva. He grew not to please them, but grievous destruction, and diresome death woes to Danemen attracted. He slew in anger his table companions, untrustworthy counselors, till he turned off lonely from the world joy's way, wide famous ruler. Though high ruling heaven in hero strength raised him, in might exalted him, o'er men of all nations made him supreme. Yet a murderous spirit grew in his bosom. He gave then no ring gems to the Danes after custom, endured he unjoyful, standing the straits from strife that was raging, lonesome folk sorrow. Learn then from this, lay hold of virtue. Though laden with winters, I have sung thee these measures. 'Tis a marvel to tell it, how all-ruling God from greatness of spirit giveth wisdom to children of men, manor and earlship, all things he ruleth. He often permitteth the mood thought of man of the illustrious lineage to lean to possessions, allows him earthly delights at his manor, a high burg of heroes to hold in his keeping, marketh and maketh portions of earth folk hear him, and a wide-reaching kingdom, so that wisdom failing him, he himself is unable to reckon its boundaries. He liveth in luxury, little debars him, nor sickness, nor age, nor treachery, sorrow, becloudeth his spirit, conflict nowhere, no sword-hate appeareth, but all of the world doth wend as he wisheth. The worse he knoweth not, till errant arrogance, inward pervading, waxeth and springeth, when the warder is sleeping. The god of the soul, with sorrows encompassed, too sound is his slumber, the slayer is near him, who with bow and arrow aimeth in malice. And that is the end of part 25. So, Beowulf brought in his trophies and said, hey, look what I did. You're safe now, no monsters will get you. And Hrothgar starts to sermon and preach and moralize. In fact, there's a lot of moralizing going on. It just went on and on and on there. Which is, it's appropriate for an epic poem like this. The epics always have some sort of message to give. Whether it be, don't be proud, which is all of the Odyssey, is don't be proud. The Iliad is, I guess, also don't be proud. But there's lots of things going along. And so Hrothgar is having his moment. Alright, part 26. Hrothgar moral. Okay, so an entire part now is set aside for Hrothgar to moralize. Cool. We're getting preached at here. Then, bruised in his bosom, he with bitter tooth missile is hurt, neath his helmet. From her harmful pollution he is powerless to shield him by the wonderful mandates of the loath cursed spirit. What too long he hath holden, him seemeth too small. Savage he hoardeth, nor boastfully giveth gold-plated rings. The fate of the future flouts and forgotteth, since God had erst given him greatness no little, wielder of glory, his end day anear. It does make sense, and that's not even just limited to fiction. When people get a little bit too big for their britches, they tend to trip up. A little bit of pride comes before the fall, so it makes sense. It's a good lesson to give, but, bro, it's been hundreds of years. Let us get away without a sermon, please. It afterward happens that the bodily dwelling fleetingly fadeth, falls into ruins. Another lays hold who doleth the ornaments, the nobleman's jewels, nothing lamenting, heedeth no terror. O Beowulf dear, best of the heroes, from bale strife defend thee, and choose thee the better, counsels eternal. Beware of arrogance, world-famous champion. But a little while lasts thy life's vigor's fullness. 'Twill after hap early, that illness or sword edge shall part thee from strength, or the grasp of the fire, or the wave of the current, or clutch of the edges, or flight of the war spear, or age with its horrors. Or thine eyes, bright flashing, shall fade into darkness. 'Twill happen full early, excellent hero, that death shall subdue thee. Okay, so now Hrothgar is not mincing words. This is just a straight up, don't be too proud, eventually you'll get old or you'll die. Usually they couch their warnings a little bit more subtly, but no, Hrothgar just says, check yourself before you wreck yourself. So the Danes, a half-century I held under heaven, helped them in struggles against many a race in Middle-earth's regions, with ashwood and edges, that enemies none on earth molested me. Lo, offsetting change now came to my manner, grief after joyance, when Grendel became my constant visitor. Inveterate hater. I know hater was actually used, but to hear it like this is just, I can see Grendel like on a smartphone tapping away on Twitter, just throwing out hate all over the place. I, from that malice continually travailed with trouble no little. Thanks be to God that I gained in my lifetime, to the Lord everlasting, to look on the glory head with mine own eyes. After long-lasting sorrow, go to the bench now, battle adorned. Joy in the feasting of jewels in common, we'll meet with many when morning appeareth. The gateman was gladsome, ganged he immediately to go to the bench, as the clever one bade him. Then again, as before, were the famous for prowess, hall inhabiters, handsomely banqueted. Feasted anew, the night veil fell then, dark o'er the warriors, the courtiers rose then, the grey-haired was anxious to go to his slumbers. The hoary old Sildan hankered the gateman, the champion doughty greatly to rest him. And earlman early outward did lead him, fagged from his faring, from far country springing, who for etiquette's sake all of a liegeman's needs regarded, such as seamen at that time were bounden to feel. The big-hearted rested, the building up-towered, spacious and gilded. The guest within slumbered, till the sable-clad raven blithely foreboded the beacon of heaven. Then the bright shining sun o'er the bottoms came going, the warriors hastened, the heads of the peoples were ready to go again to their peoples. The high-mooded farer would far away thenceward look for his vessel, the valiant one bade then, offspring of Ecglaf, off to bear hunting, to take his weapon, his well-beloved iron. Him thanked for the gift, saying good he accounted the war-friend and mighty, nor chid he with words then the blade of the brand. 'Twas a brave-mooded hero. When the warriors were ready, arrayed in their trappings, the atheling dear to the Danesman advanced then, on to the dais where the other was sitting. Grim-mooded hero greeted King Hrothgar. So, they're, getting ready to leave. Beowulf's like, alright, my business here is done. I'm off for more adventures, off for home. And before he goes, they had to explicitly say that he was tired and went to bed. Okay, sure. But in the morning, Unferth, the local hater of Hero, was like, hey, you know what? You're big after all. You got the biggest gains. Here, keep my sword. And so he does. Beowulf keeps the famous sword hunting. So we'll see what sort of adventures the biggest of boys has with this most famous of swords. Part 27. Sorrow at Parting. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's offspring. We men of the water wish to declare now, fared from far lands, we're firmly determined to seek King Hygelac. Here have we fitly been welcomed and feasted, as heart would desire it. Good was the greeting, if greater affection I am anywise able ever on earth to gain at thy hands, ruler of heroes, then yet I have done. I shall quickly be ready for combat and conflict, o'er the course of the waters. Learn I that neighbours alarm thee with terror, as haters did whilom. I hither will bring thee for help unto heroes henchmen by thousands. I know as to Hygelac, the lord of the gatemen. Though young in years, he yet will permit me, by words and by works, ward of the people, fully to furnish thee forces and bear thee my lance to relieve thee, if liegemen shall fail thee, and help of my hand strength. If Hrethik be treating, bairn of the king at the court of the gateman, he thereat may find him, friends in abundance. Far-away countries he were better to seek for, who trusts in himself. Hrothgar discoursed then, making rejoinder. These words thou hast uttered, all-knowing God hath given thy spirit. Ne'er heard I an earlman thus early in life more clever in speaking. Thou art cautious of spirit, mighty of muscle, in mouth answers prudent. I count on the hope that happen it ever, that missile shall rob thee of Hrethel's descendant. Edge horrid battle, and illness or weapon deprive thee of prince, of people's protector. And life thou yet holdest, the sea gates will never find a more fitting folklore to choose from. Gem ward of heroes, that than thou mightiest prove thee, if the kingdom of kinsmen thou carest to govern. Thy mood spirit likes me, the longer the better. Beowulf dear, thou hast brought it to pass, that to both these peoples peace shall be common. To Geat folk and Danemen the strife be suspended, the secret assailings they suffered in your days, and also that jewels be shared while I govern the wide-stretching kingdom, and that many shall visit, others o'er the ocean with excellent gift gems. The ring-adored bark shall bring o'er the currents presents and love gifts. This people I know toward foeman and friend firmly established, after ancient etiquette everywise blameless. Then the warden of earlmen gave him still farther, kinsman of Halfdane, a dozen of jewels. Bade him safely seek with the presents his well-beloved people. Early returning, then the noble-born king kissed the distinguished, dear-loved liegeman. The Dane prince saluted him, and clasped his neck. Tears from him fell. From the grey-headed man, two things expected. Aged and reverend, but rather the second, that bold in council they'd meet thereafter. The man was so dear that he failed to suppress the emotions that moved him, but in mood fetters fastened. The long famous hero longeth in secret, deep in his spirit for the dear beloved man, though not blood kinsman. Beowulf thenceward, gold-splendid warrior, walked o'er the meadows, exulting in treasure. The sea-going vessel riding at anchor awaited its owner. As they pressed on their way then, the present of Hrothgar was frequently referred to. A folk king indeed, that every way blameless, till age did debar him. The joys of his might, which hath many oft injured. So, Beowulf is finally on his way, and Hrothgar loves him like another son, and gives all the gifts that could be expected and more. A more gracious host you could never find. So, that's good. That's good. Don't piss off the biggest of bees. Part 28. The Homeward Journey. The Two Queens. This does carry on quite a lot longer than I thought and remembered. I knew there was Grendel and the mother of Grendel, but then it just keeps going. It's a lot like Wizard of Oz, where we got to a certain point, we're like, okay, yeah, that's done, right? We're finished. No, there's more. Don't worry, there's more. Then the band of very valiant retainers came to the current. They were clad all in armor, in link-woven burnies. The land warder noticed the return of the earlmen, as he erstwhile had seen them. Nowise with insult he greeted the strangers from the naze of the cliff, but rode on to meet them. Said the bright-armored visitors, vesselward travelled, welcome to Vaders. The wide-bosomed craft then lay on the sand, laden with armor, with horses and jewels. The ring-stemmed sailor, the mast up-towered o'er the treasure of Hrothgar. To the boat-ward a gold-bound brand he presented, that he was afterwards honoured on the ale-bench more highly. As the heirloom's owner, he set out on the vessel, to drive on the deep Dane country left he. So Beowulf continues to be a bro, as he gives the Coast Guard, who was keeping an eye on his boat, a little something on his way out. Like, you know what? Here, good man, have a tip. Yeah, that makes sense. It just, we follow along through the life of the hero. That's kind of what the Odyssey was, if you think about it too. It's common among all of the epics. We get, like, with the Iliad and the Odyssey, we follow Odysseus through both, and then it continues after he comes home, and like, oh yeah, and then like 20 years after he goes off away. And so it's a very common theme for these epics to follow the fate of their hero, and it does kind of trail off after the biggest of incidents at the start, and where they earn their stripes, so to speak. Along by the mast then a sea garment fluttered, a rope-fastened sail, the sea-boat resounded. The wind o'er the waters, the wave-floater nowise, kept from its journey the sea-goer travelled. The foamy-necked floateth forth o'er the currents, the well-fashioned vessel, o'er the ways of the ocean, till they came within sight of the cliffs of the Gateman. The well-known headlands, the wave-goer hastened, driven by breezes stood on the shore. Prompt at the ocean the port-ward was ready, who long in the past outlooked in the distance, at water's edge waiting well-loved heroes. He bound to the bank then the broad-bosomed vessel, fast in its fetters, lest the force of the waters should be able to injure the ocean-wood winsome. Bade he up then take the treasure of princes, plate gold and fretwork, not far was it thence to go off in search of the giver of jewels. Hrethel's son Hygelac at home there remaineth, himself with his comrades close to the sea-coast. The building was splendid, the king heroic, great in his hall, Hygd very young was. Fine-mooded, clever, though few were the winters that the daughter of Hereth had dwelt in the borough. But she no wise was cringing nor niggard of presents, of ornaments rare to the race of the Gateman. Thrytho nursed anger, excellent folk queen. Hot burning hatred, no hero whatever, 'mong household companions her husband excepted. Dared to adventure to look at the woman with eyes in the daytime, but he knew that death chains and wreath were wrought them early hereafter. When the hand strife was over, edges were ready. That fierce raging sword point had to force a decision. Murder bale show such no womanly custom for a lady to practice, though lovely her person, that a weaver of peace on pretense of anger a beloved liegeman of life should deprive. Soothly this hindered Hemming's kinsman. Other ale-drinking earlmen asserted that fearful folk's sorrows, fewer she wrought them, treacherous doings, since first she was given, adorned with gold to the war hero youthful, for her origin honoured, when Offa's great palace, o'er the fallow flood by her father's instructions, she sought on her journey, where she afterwards fully, famed for her virtue, her fate on the king's seat, enjoyed in her lifetime. Love did she hold with the ruler of heroes, the best, it is told me, of all of the earthmen that oceans encompass, of earl kindreds endless. Hence Offa was famous, far and widely, by gifts and by battles, spear valiant hero, the home of his fathers. He governed with wisdom, whence Eomer did issue. For help unto heroes, Hemming's kinsman, grandson of Garmund, great in encounters. Part 29. Beowulf and Hygelac. Hygelac is the king of his homeland, I think it was. Then the brave one departed, his band along with him, seeking the seashore, the sea marches treading. With wide-stretching shores the world candle glimmered. The sun from the southward they proceeded then onward, early arriving where they heard that the troop lord, Ongentheow's slayer, excellent, youthful folk prince and warrior, was distributing jewels. Close in his castle the coming of Beowulf was announced in a message quickly to Hygelac, that the troop folk's defender, forth to the palace, the linden companion alive was advancing, secure from the combat courtward a-going. The building was early inward made ready, for the foot-going guests, as the good one had ordered. He sat by the man then who had lived through the struggle, kinsman by kinsman. When the king of the people had in lordly language saluted the dear one, in words that were formal, the daughter of Hareth coursed through the building, carrying mead cups. She loved the retainers, tendered the beakers, to the high-minded gateman Hygelac gan them, then pleasantly plying his companion with questions in the high towering palace. A curious interest tormented his spirit, what meaning to see in the sea-gate's adventures. Beowulf worthy, how throve your journeying, when thou thoughtest suddenly far o'er the salt streams to seek an encounter? A battle at Hero hast bettered for Hrothgar, the famous folk leader, his far published sorrows. Any at all, in agony billows? I mused upon torture, distrusted the journey of the beloved liegeman. I long time did pray thee by no means to seek out the murderous spirit, to suffer the South Danes themselves to decide on, grappling with Grendel. To God I am thankful to be suffered to see thee safe from thy journey. Beowulf answered, bairn of old Ecgtheow, "'Tis hidden by no means, Hygelac chieftain, from many of men the meeting so famous, that what mournful moments of me and of Grendel were passed in the place where he pressing affliction on the victory Silding scathefully brought, anguish forever, that all I avenged, so that any under heaven of the kinsmen of Grendel needeth not boast of that cry in the morning, who longest liveth of the loth-going kindred, encompassed by moorland. I came in my journey to the royal ring hall, Hrothgar to greet there. Soon did the famous scion of Healfdene, when he understood fully the spirit that led me, assign me a seat with the son of his bosom. The troop was in joyance, mead glee greater, neath arch of the aether, not ever beheld I mid-hall building holders. The highly famed queen, peace-tide peoples, oft passed through the building, cheered the young trooper, she oft tendered a hero a beautiful ring-band, ere she went to her sitting. Oft the daughters of Hrothgar, in view of the courtiers, to the earls of the End the ale-vessel carried, whom Freower, I heard, then Holsiter's title, when nail-adorned jewels she gave to the heroes. Gold-bedecked, youthful, to the glad son of Froda, her faith had been plighted, the friend of the Scyldings. The guard of the kingdom hath given his sanction, and counts it a vantage, for a part of the quarrels, a portion of hatred, to pay with the woman. Somewhere, not rarely, when the ruler has fallen, the life-taking lance relaxeth its fury, for a brief breathing spell, though the bride be charming. So, Beowulf is now retelling the story to his liege lord, and all the while mentioning that, you know what, Hrothgar's got a pretty nice daughter. Wink, wink. It did. It did. Thank you. Thanks for catching that. Yeah, so I had muted to take a drink and forgot to unmute. Such it is. Anyway, so we are continuing from part 30. Beowulf narrates his adventures to Higelac, which is, again, a story within a story within a story. That is a story that we've already seen, told already once in this same story. They hadn't quite ironed out proper narrative flow at this point in time. But it's alright. Let big ol' Beowulf just keep on keeping on. It may well discomfort the prince of the Heathbards, and each of the thanemen of earls that attend him, when he goes to the building escorting the woman, that on noble-born danemen the knights should be feasting. There gleam on his person the leavings of elders, hard and ring bright, Heathbard's treasure, while they wielded their arms till they misled to the battle their own dear lives and beloved companions. He saith at the banquet, who colour beholdeth an ancient ash warrior, whose earlman's destruction clearly recalleth cruel spirit, sadly beginneth sounding the youthful Thane champion's spirit through the thoughts of his bosom, where war grief to waken, and this word answer spaketh, art thou able, my friend, to know when thou seest it, the brand which thy father bare to the conflict, in his latest adventure, neath visor of helmet. The dearly loved son where Danemen did slay him, and brave-mooted Scyldings, on the fall of the heroes, when vengeance was sleeping, the slaughter-place wielded. E'en now, some man of the murderer's progeny, exulting in ornaments, enters the building, boasts of his bloodshedding, oft beareth the jewel which thou shouldest wholly hold in possession. So he urgeth, and mindeth on every occasion, with woe-bringing words, till waxeth the season, when the woman's thane for the works of his father, the bill having bitten, blood-gory sleepeth, fated to perish, the other one thenceward scapeth alive. The land knoweth thoroughly. Then the oaths of the earlmen on each side are broken, when rancours unresting are raging at Ingeld, and his wife love waxeth, less warm after sorrow. So the Heathbards' favour not faithful, I reckon, their part in the treaty not true to the Danemen, their friendship not fast. I further shall tell thee more about Grendel, that thou fully mayest hear, ornament giver, what afterward came from the hand-rush of heroes. When heaven's bright jewel o'er earthfields had gilded, the stranger came raging, the horrible night fiend, for us to visit. Where, wholly unarmed, the hall we were guarding, to Honcio happened a hopeless contention. Death to the doomed one, dead he fell foremost. Girded war champion, to him Grendel became then, to the vassal distinguished, a tooth-weaponed murderer. The well-beloved henchman's body all swallowed. Not the earlier oft empty of hand did the bloody-toothed murderer, mindful of evils, wish to escape from the gold-giver's palace. But sturdy of strength he strove to outdo me. Hand ready grappled, a glove was suspended, spacious and wondrous, in art fetters fastened, which was fashioned entirely by touch of the craftsman. From the dragon's skin, by the devil's devices, he down in its depths would do me unsadly. One among many, deed-doer raging, though sinless he saw me, not so could it happen, when I, in my anger upright did stand. 'Tis too long to recount how requital I furnished, for every evil to the earlman's destroyer. 'Twas there, my prince, that I proudly distinguished thy land with my labours. He left and retreated. He lived his life a little while longer, yet his right hand guarded his footstep in hero. And sad-mooded thence to the sea-bottom fell he, mournful in mind for the might-rush of battle, the friend of the Scyldings, with gold that was plated, with ornaments many much requited me. When daylight had dawned, and down to the banquet had sat us together, there was chanting and joyance. The age-stricken Scylding asked many questions, and of old times related oft light-ringing harp-strings. Joy-telling wood were touched by the brave one. Now he uttered measures, mourning and truthful. Then the large-hearted land king a legend of wonder truthfully told us. Now, troubled with years, the age-hoary warrior afterward began to mourn for the might that marked him in youth days. His breast within boiled, then when burdened with winters, much he remembered from morning till night then. We toyed thus therein as etiquette suffered, till the second night season came upon the earthfolk. Then early thereafter, the mother of Grendel was ready for vengeance. Wretched she journeyed, her son had death ravished, the wrath of the Gateman, the horrible woman avenged her offspring, and with mighty main strength murdered a hero. There, the spirit of Asher, aged adviser, was ready to vanish. Nor, when morn had lightened, were they anywise suffered to consume him with fire. Folk of the Danemen, the death-weakened hero, nor the beloved liegeman to lay on the pyre. She, the corpse, had oft carried in the clutch of the foeman. 'Neath mountain brook's flood, to Hrothgar was saddest of pains that ever had preyed on the chieftain. By the life of thee, the land prince then me besought very sadly, in sea currents' eddies, to display my prowess, to peril my safety. Might deeds accomplish, much did he promise. I found then the famous flood current's cruel, horrible depth warder. A while unto us two, hand was in common. The currents were seething with gore that was clotted, and Grendel's fierce mother's head I off-hacked in the hole at the bottom, with huge reaching sword edge. Hardly I wrested my life from her clutches, not doomed was I then, but the warden of Ermin afterward gave me jewels in quantity, kinsman of Halfdane. Brings us to the end of part 30. So they're continuing to retell his story. Actually, not really even not tooting his horn too much there. Just saying it as it is. Not self-inflating, not making things seem a little bit more than it was. He's every bit the hero, and he's just like, you know what? I did that. Brushing his shoulders a little bit. Alright. Part 31. We'll get through one more part before we take a short break. Gift-giving is mutual. So the beloved land prince lived in decorum. I had missed no rewards, no meeds of my prowess, but he gave me jewels regarding my wishes. Halfdane his bairn, I'll bring them to thee then. Atheling of Earlman, offer them gladly. And still unto thee is all my affection, but few of my folkkin find I surviving. But thee, dear Higelac, bade he in then to carry the boar image, banner, battle, high helmet, iron grey armour, the excellent weapon, in song measure said, this suit for the battle Hrothgar presented me, bade me expressly, wise-mooded atheling, thereafter to tell thee the whole of its history. Said King Harogar owned it, deigned Prince for long, yet he wished not to give then the mail to his son, though dearly he loved him. Hereward the hardy hold in all joyance. I heard that there followed hard on the jewels 2 braces of stallions, of striking resemblance, dappled in yellow. He granted him usance of horses and treasures, so a kinsman should bear him. No web of treachery weave for another, nor by cunning crafting his cause for the destruction of the trusty companion. Most precious to Higelac, the bold one in battle was the bairn of his sister, and each unto other mindful of favours. I am told that to Hygd he preferred the necklace, wonder gem rare that Wealhtheow gave him. The troop leader's daughter, a trio of horses, slender and saddle bright, soon did the jewel embellish her bosom. When the beer feast was over, so Ecgtheow's bairn brave did prove him, war-famous man, by deeds that were valiant. He lived in honour, beloved companions, slew not carousing, his mood was not cruel, but by hand-strength hugest of heroes then living. The brave one retained the bountiful gift that the Lord had allowed him. Long was he wretched, so that the sons of the gatemen accounted him worthless, and the lord of the liegemen loth was to do him mickle of honour. When mead cups were passing, they fully believed him idle and sluggish. An indolent atheling, to the honour-blessed man there came requital for the cuts he had suffered. The folk troop's defender bade fetch to the building the heirloom of Hraethel, embellished with gold. So the brave one enjoined it. There was jewel no richer, in the form of a weapon 'mong Geats of that era. In Beowulf's keeping he placed it and gave him 7 of thousands, manor and lordship. Common to both was land among the people, estate and inherited rights and possessions. To the second one, specially spacious dominions. To the one who was better, it afterward happened. In days that followed befell the battle thanes after Higelac's death, and when Heardred was murdered with weapons of warfare neath well-covered targets, when valiant battlemen in victor band sought him, war-sylphing heroes harassed the nephew of Hereric in battle. To Beowulf's keeping turned there in time extensive dominions. He fittingly ruled them 50 of winters. He, man ruler wise, was manor-ward old, till a certain one gan, on gloom-darkening nights, a dragon to govern who guarded a treasure, a high-rising stone cliff on heath that was greyish. A path neath it lay, unknown unto mortals. Someone of earthmen entered the mountain, the heathenish horde laid hold of with ardour. That brings us to the end of part 31. So, Beowulf gave most of his gifts that he received from as a reward for slaying Grendel and his mother to his lord and his household, and in return his lord, his uncle, gave him just as many gifts back. And in the pursuit of years, eventually his uncle died, and Beowulf inherited the throne, or the rulership. And after many winters, Beowulf is called to a new adventure. A dragon is to be found. Alright, let's go ahead and take a short break. We'll go ahead and top up our drinks and stretch our legs, and we'll be back after just a little while to see what sort of further adventures we find with Beowulf here, now that he's a king in his own right. Alright, be back in just a bit. Alright, we are back. So, we've seen the primary adventures of Beowulf here, and we've seen what would normally be considered a very fitting end. He's come home, exchanged gifts with friends and family, and eventually becomes a king in his own right. Meditashi, happily ever after. But, no, there is still quite a lot left. There are more adventures at hand, ready for Beowulf. Because what epic really is finished that doesn't end with the hero's own end? So, let's continue on and see whether it be a storied end, or whether there be some extra lesson to be found. Next up we have part 32, The Horde and the Dragon. I really didn't expect dragons when we were talking about Beowulf. I did not remember that, honestly. He sought of himself, who sorely did harm him, but, for need very pressing, the servant of one of the sons of the heroes hate blows abated, seeking for shelter. And the sin-driven warrior took refuge within there. He early looked in it, when the onset surprised him. He, a gem vessel, saw there many of such like ancient ornaments in the earth cave were lying, as in days of yore some one of men of illustrious lineage, as a legacy monstrous, there was secreted them. Careful and thoughtful, dear valued jewels. Death had oft-snatched them in the days of the past, and the one man, moreover, of the flowers of the folk who fared there the longest, was fain to defer it. Friend mourning warder, a little longer to be left in enjoyment of long-lasting treasure. A barrow already stood on the plain, the stream currents nigh to, knew by the ness edge, a neth of approaching, the keeper of rings carried within a ponderous deal of the treasure of nobles. Of gold that was beaten, briefly he spake then, hold thou a worth. Now heroes no more may, the earnings of earlmen, lo, erst in thy bosom, worthy men won them. War death hath ravished, perilous life bale all my warriors, liegemen beloved, who this life have forsaken. Who whole pleasures saw, no sword-bearer have I, and no one to burnish the gold-plated vessel. The high-valued beaker, my heroes, are vanished. The hardy helmet behung with gilding shall be reaved of its riches. The ring cleansers slumber, who were charged to have ready visors for battle. And the byrnie that bided in battle encounter, or breaking of war shields, the bite of the edges, molds with the hero. The ring-twisted armor, its lord being lifeless, no longer may journey hanging by heroes, harp joys vanished. The rapture of glee wood, no excellent falcon swoops through the building, no swift-footed charger grindeth the gravel, a grievous destruction. No few of the world-folk widely hath scattered. So woeful of spirit, one after all lamented mournfully, moaning in sadness, by day and by night, till death with its bellows dashed on his spirit. Then the ancient dusk-scather found the great treasure standing all open. He who, flaming and fiery, flies to the barrows, naked war-dragon, nightly escapeth encompassed with fire. Men under heavens widely beheld him. 'Tis said that he looks for the hoard in the earth, where old he is guarding the heathenish treasure. He'll be no wise the better. So 300 winters the waster of peoples held upon earth that excellent hoard hall, till the aforementioned earlman angered him bitterly. The beat-plated beaker he bare to his chieftain, and fullest remission for all his remissness, begged of his liege lord. Then the hoard was discovered. The treasure was taken, his petition was granted, the lord-mooded liegeman his lord regarded. The old work of earthfolk was the earliest occasion. When the dragon awoke, the strife was renewed there. He snuffed long the snow, and then, stout-hearted, found he the footprint of foeman. Too far had he gone, with cunning craftiness, close to the head of the fire-spewing dragon. So, undoomed, he may escape from anguish and exile with ease who possesseth the favour of heaven. The hoard warden eagerly searched o'er the ground then, would meet with the person that caused him sorrow while in slumber reclining. Gleaming and wild he oft went round the cavern, all of it outward. Not any of earthmen was seen in that desert. Yet he joyed in the battle, rejoiced in the conflict. Oft he turned to the barrow, sought for the gem cup. This he soon perceived then, that some man or other had discovered the gold, the famous folk treasure. Not fain did the hoard ward wait until evening. Then the ward of the barrow was angry in spirit, and loathed one wished to pay for the dear-valued drink cup with fire. Then the day was done, as the dragon would have it. He no longer would wait on the wall, but departed. Fire-impelled, flaming, fearful the start was to earls in the land, as it early thereafter to the giver of gold was grievously ended. Yes, so you find a dragon's hoard and you steal from it and hope that nothing bad happens, and then something bad happens and you wonder, oh no, why did something bad happen to us? Yes. That's TLDR for that one. Don't steal from dragons. Part 33. Brave though aged. Reminiscences. The stranger began then to vomit forth fire, to burn the great manor. The blaze then glimmered, for anguish to earlmen not anything living was the hateful air-goer willing to leave there. The war of the worm widely was noticed, the feud of the foemen afar and anear, how the enemy injured the earls of the gatemen, harried with hatred, back he hied to the treasure, to the well-hidden cavern, ere the coming of daylight. He had circled with fire the folk of those regions, with brand and burning. In the barrow he trusted, in the wall and his war might, the weaning deceived him. Then straight was the horror to Beowulf published. Early, forsooth, that his own native homestead, the best of buildings, was burning and melting. Gift seat of gatemen, 'twas a grief to the spirit of the good-mooded hero, the greatest of sorrows. The wise one weened then that wielding his kingdom 'gainst the ancient commandments he had bitterly angered the Lord everlasting. With lorn meditations his bosom welled inward, as was no wise his custom. The fire-spewing dragon fully had wasted the fastness of warriors, the waterland outward, the manor with fire, the folk-ruling hero. Prince of the Vaders was planning to wreck him. The warmen's defender bade them to make him earlman's atheling, an excellent war shield, wholly of iron. Fully he knew then that wood from the forest was helpless to aid him, shield against fire. The long-worthy ruler must live the last of his limited earth days of life in the world, and the worm along with him. Though he long had been holding a hoard wealth in plenty, then the ring prince disdained to seek with a warband. With an army extensive, the air-going ranger, he felt no fear of the foeman's assault, and he counted for little the might of the dragon. His power and prowess, for previously dared he a heap of hostility, hazarded dangers. War Thane, when Hrothgar's palace he cleansed, conquering combatant clutched in the battle. The kinsman of Grendel, of kindred detested, 'twas of hand-fights not least where Hygelac was slaughtered, when the king of the gatemen with clashings of battle, friend lord of folks in Frisian dominions, offspring of Hrethel, perished through sword drink. With battle swords beaten, thence Beowulf came then, on self-help relying. Swam through the waters, he bare on his arm, lone going, 30 outfits of armor. When the ocean he mounted, the Hetwars by no means had need to be boastful of their fighting afoot, who forward to meet him carried their war shields. Not many returned from the brave-mooded battle, night back to their homesteads. Ecgtheow's bairn o'er the bight courses swam then, lone goer, lorn to his landfolk returning. where hid to him tendered treasure and kingdom, rings and dominion, her son she not trusted. To be able to keep the kingdom devised him 'gainst alien races on the death of King Hygelac. Yet the sad ones succeeded not in persuading the Atheling in any way ever to act as suzerain. To Heardred, or promise to govern the kingdom, yet with friendly counsel in the folk he sustained them, gracious with honour till he grew to be older, wielded the Vaders, wide-fleeing outlaws. Othaire's sons sought him o'er the waters, they had stirred a revolt 'gainst the helm of the Sylfings, the best of the sea kings who in Swedish dominions distributed treasure, distinguished folk leader. 'Twas the end of his earth days, injury fatal, by swing of the sword he received as a greeting. Offspring of Hygelac, Ongthiau's bairn, later departed to view his homestead. When Heardred was dead, let Beowulf rule them, govern the gatemen. Good was that folk king. So this part is a bit all over the place as far as like where in the story you are and where in the timeline. Timelines get awful fuzzy in these sort of narratives, but the dragon was raising the countryside, burninating the country, and Beowulf said, "You know what? I'm off to take care of it myself. I don't need an army. I don't need a crew. I'm just going to take care of this." And we'll see how that works out for him. I'm sure nothing bad will happen. Right? Right. Remember what we said about pride? Alright, part 34. Beowulf seeks the dragon. Beowulf's reminiscences. He planned requital for the folk leader's ruin. In days thereafter, to Egdil's the wretched, becoming an enemy, Othaire's son then went with a war troop o'er the wide-stretching currents, with warriors and weapons, with woe journeys cold, he after avenged him. The king's life he took. So he came off uninjured from all his battles, perilous fights offspring of Ethgthau, from his deeds of daring, till that day most momentous, when he, fate-driven, fared to fight with the dragon, with 11 companions, the prince of the gatemen. Okay, so he did get friends this time around, okay. Went lowering with fury to look at the fire drake, inquiring he'd found how the feud had arisen. Hate to his heroes, the highly famed gem vessel was brought to his keeping, through the hand of the informer, that in the throng was 13th of heroes, that caused the beginning of conflict so bitter. Captive and wretched, must sad-mooded thenceward point out the place he passed then unwillingly, to the spot where he knew of the notable cavern, the cave under earth, not far from the ocean, the anger of eddies which inward was full of jewels and wires, a warden uncanny, warrior weaponed, warded the treasure, old under earth, no easy possession, for any of earth folk access to get to. Then the battle-brave Atheling sat on the nay's edge, while the gold friend of gateman gracious saluted. His fireside companions, woe was his spirit, death boding, wavering, weird, very near him, who must seize the old hero, his sole treasure look for, dragging aloof his life from his body. Not flesh hidden long was the folk leader's spirit. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's son. I survived in my youth days many a conflict, hours of onset, that all I remember, I was 7 winters old, when the Jewel Prince took me, high lord of heroes, at the hands of my father. Hrethel, the hero king, had me in keeping, gave me treasure and feasting, our kinship remembered. Not ever was I any less dear to him, knight in the boroughs, than the bairns of his household. Herbold and Hrethen and Hygelac mine, to the eldest, unjustly by acts of a kinsman, was murder bed strewn. Hence, him Haethcyn from Hornbow, his sheltering chieftain, shot with an arrow, erred in his aim and injured his kinsman. One brother the other, with blood-sprinkled spear, 'twas a fearless fight, finished in malice. Sad to his spirit, the folk prince, however, had to part from existence, with vengeance untaken. So to hoar-headed hero 'tis heavily crushing, to live to see his son as he rideth, young, on the gallows, then measures he chanteth, a song of sorrow, when his son is hanging, for the raven's delight, and aged and hoary, he is unable to offer any assistance. Every morning his offspring's departure is constant recalled. He cares not to wait for the birth of an heir in his burrow enclosures, since that one through death pain the deeds hath experienced. He, heart grieved, beholds in the house of his son the wine builded wasted, the wind lodging places reaved of their roaring, the riders a-sleeping, the knights in the grave. There's no sound of the harpwood. Joy in the yards as of yore were familiar. Part 35. Reminiscences continued, and Beowulf's last battle. He seeks then his chamber, singeth a woe song, one for the other, all too extensive, seemed homesteads and plains, seemed mindful of Herbald, heart sorrow carried, stirred with emotion, no wise was able to wreak his ruin on the ruthless destroyer. He was unable to follow the warrior with hatred, with deeds that were direful, though dear he not held him. Then, pressed by the pang this pain occasioned him, he gave up glee. God light elected he left to his sons, as the man that is rich does, his land and fortress. When from life he departed, then was crime and hostility twixt Swedes and Geatmen. O'er wide-stretching water warring was mutual, burdensome hatred when Hrethel had perished, and Ongtha's offspring were active and valiant, wished not to hold of peace over sea. But round Hreosna Beor often accomplished cruelest massacre. This my kinsman avenged, the feud and fury, as 'tis found on inquiry, through one of them paid it with forfeit of life joys, with price that was hard. The struggle became then fatal to Hreithson, lord of the Geatmen. Then I heard that at morning one brother the other with edges of irons egged on to murder. Where Ongthau maketh onset on Eofor, the helmet crashed, the hoary-haired Sylfing sword-smitten fell. His hand then remembered, viewed hate sufficient, refused not the death blow. The gems that he gave me with jewel-bright sword I quitted in contest, as occasion was offered. Land he allowed me, life joy at homestead, manor to live on. Little he needed from Gepids or Danes or in Sweden to look for, trooper less true, with treasure to buy him. 'Mong foot soldiers ever in front I would hie me, alone in the vanguard, and ever more gladly warfare shall wage, while this weapon endureth, that late and early often did serve me. When I proved before heroes the slayer of Degrafin, knight of the Human, he by no means was suffered to the king of the Frisians to carry the jewels, the breast decoration. But the banner possessor bowed in the battle, brave-mooded Atheling. No weapon was slayer, but war grapple broke then the surge of his spirit, his body destroying. Now shall weapon's edge make war for the treasure, and hand and firm sword. Beowulf spake then, boast words uttered, the latest occasion. I braved in my youth days battles unnumbered. Still am I willing to struggle to look for, fame deeds perform. Folk warden prudent, if the hateful despoiler forth from his cavern seeketh me out. Each of the heroes, helm-bearers sturdy, he thereupon greeted, beloved co-liegeman, his last salutation. No brand would I bear, no blade for the dragon, wist I away my word boast accomplish. Else with the monster, as with Grendel I did it, but fire in the battle hot I expect there, furious flame burning, so I fixed on my body, target and war mail, the ward of the barrow. I'll not flee from a foot length, the foeman uncanny. At the wall 'twill befall us, as fate decreeth. Each one's creator, I am eager in spirit, with the winged war hero to away with all boasting. bide on the barrow with burnies protected, earls in armor. Which of us two may better bear his disaster? When the battle is over, 'tis no matter of yours, and men cannot do it, but me and me only, to measure his strength with the monster of malice, might deeds to accomplish. I with prowess shall gain the gold or the battle, direful death woe will drag off your ruler. The mighty champion rose by his shield then. Brave under helmet in battle mail went he, 'neath steep rising stone cliffs. The strength he relied on of one man alone, no work for a coward. Then he saw by the wall who a great many battles had lived through, most worthy, when foot troops collided. Stone arches standing, stout-hearted champion, saw a brook from the barrow bubbling out thenceward. The flood of the fountain was fuming with war flame, not nigh to the horde for season the briefest. Could he brave, without burning, the abyss that was yawning? The drake was so fiery, the prince of the Vaders, caused then that words came from his bosom. So fierce was his fury, the firm-hearted shouted. His battle-clear voice came in resounding, 'neath the grey-coloured stone. Stirred was his hatred, the horde ward distinguished, the speech of a man. Time was no longer to look out for friendship. The breath of the monster issued forth first. Vapory war sweat out of the stone cave, the earth re-echoed. The earl neath the barrow lifted his shield, lord of the gatemen, toward the terrible stranger. The ring-twisted creature's heart was then ready to seek for a struggle. The excellent battle-king first brandished his weapon, the ancient heirloom of edges unblunted, to the death-planners twain, the terror from other. The lord of the troopers intrepidly stood then, 'gainst his high-rising shield. When the dragon coiled him quickly together, in corslet he bided. He went then in blazes, bended and striding, hastening him forward. His life and body the Taj well protected. For time period shorter than wish demanded for the well-renowned leader, where he then for the first day was forced to be victor. Famous in battle as fate had not willed it, the lord of the gatemen uplifted his hand then, smiting the fire drake with sword that was precious, that bright on the bone the blade edge did weaken, bit more feebly than his folk leader needed. Burdened with bale griefs, then the barrow protector with his sword blow had fallen, was fierce in his spirit, flinging his fire's flamings of battle. Gleamed then afar the gold friend of Vaders, boasted no conquests. His battle sword failed him, naked in conflict, as by no means it ought to, long trusty weapon. 'Twas no slight undertaking that Ecgtheow's famous offspring would leave the Drake cavern's bottom. He must live in some region other than this, by the will of the dragon. As each one of Earthmen's existence must forfeit, 'twas early thereafter the excellent warriors met with each other, anew and afresh. The horde ward took heart, gasps heaved then his bosom. Sorrow he suffered encircled with fire, who the people erst governed. His companions by no means were banded about him, bands of the princes, with valorous spirit, but they sped to the forest, seeking for safety. The soul deeps of one were ruffled by care. Kin love can never aught in him waver who well doth consider. That is the end of part 35. So, Beowulf has gone off to his battle with the dragon, and it doesn't go quite as well as you would expect. He is an old man at this point, and his sword doesn't quite bite as sharply as he would have liked. And so he and the dragon go back and forth, and he's sort of pushed to the edge of his own limits. And his companions, who he brought with him, the 11 men, ran away, afraid of the dragon's fire. So we'll see how this will reach its conclusion next, in part 36. Well, maybe not quite the conclusion. Wiglaf, the trusty. Beowulf is deserted by friends and by sword. The son of Eastan was Wiglaf entitled. Shield warrior precious, prince of the Sylfings, Aelfhere's kinman. He saw his dear liege lord enduring the heat neath helmet and visor. Then he minded the holding that erst he had given him, the Vegmunding warrior's wealth-blessed homestead. Each of the folk rights his father had wielded. He was hot for the battle. His hand seized the target. The yellow-bark shield he unsheathed his old weapon, which was known among earthmen as the relic of Eanmund, Othair's offspring, whom, exiled and friendless, Weohstan did slay with sword-edge in battle, and carried his kinsman the clear-shining helmet, the ring-made byrnie, the old giant weapon that Honella gave him, his boon-fellow's armor. Ready war trappings he the feud did not mention, though he'd fatally smitten the son of his brother. Many a half-year held he the treasures, the bill and the byrnie, till his bairn became able, like his father before him, famed deeds to accomplish. Then he gave him, 'mong gatemen, a goodly array of weeds for his warfare. He went from life then old on his journey. 'Twas the earliest time then that the youthful champion might charge in the battle, aiding his liege lord. His spirit was dauntless. Nor did kinsmen bequest quail at the battle. This the dragon discovered on their coming together. Wiglaf uttered many a right saying, said to his fellows, sad was his spirit. I remember the time when, tasting the mead cup, we promised in the hall the lord of us all, who gave us these ring treasures, that this battle equipment, swords and helmets, he'd certainly quite him, should need of such aid ever befall him. In the war-band he chose us for this journey spontaneously, stirred us to glory, and gave me these jewels, since he held and esteemed us trustworthy spearmen, hardy helm-bearers. Though his hero achievement our Lord intended alone to accomplish, ward of his people, for most of achievements, doings audacious he did among earthfolk, the day is now come when the ruler of earthmen needeth the vigour of valiant heroes. Let us wend us toward him, the war-prince to succour. While the heat yet rageth horrible fire fight, God wot in me 'tis mickle the lifer, the blaze should embrace my body and eat it, then with my treasure bestower. Meseemeth not proper to bear our battle shields back to our country, lest first we are able to fell and destroy the long-hating foeman. To defend the life of the prince of the Vaders, well do I know, 'tisn't earned by his exploits, he only of gateman sorrow should suffer, sink in the battle. Brand and helmet to us both shall be common, shield cover byrnie. Through the bale smoke he stalked then, went under helmet to the help of his chieftain. Briefly discoursing, Beowulf dear, perform thou all fully, as thou formerly saidst in thy youthful years, that while yet thou livedst, thou wouldst let thine honour not ever be lessened. Thy life thou shalt save, mighty in actions, atheling undaunted with all of thy vigour. I'll give thee assistance. The dragon came raging, wild-mooded stranger, when these words had been uttered. 'Twas the second occasion, seeking his enemies, men that were hated, with hot gleaming fire waves. With blaze billows burned the board to its edges. The fight armor failed then to furnish assistance to the youthful spear hero, but the young, aged stripling quickly advanced neath his kinsman's war target, since his own had been ground in the grip of the fire. When the warrior king was careful of glory, he soundly smote with sword for the battle. That it stood in the heat head, by hatred driven, Naegling was shivered. The old and iron-made brand of Beowulf in battle deceived him. 'Twas denied him that edges of irons were able to help in the battle. The hand was too mighty, which every weapon, as I heard on inquiry, outstruck in its stroke. When to struggle he garried this wonderful war sword, it waxed him no better. Then the people despoiler, third of his onsets, fierce raging fire drake, of feud hate was mindful, charged on the strong one when chance was afforded. Heated and war grim seized on his neck with teeth that were bitter. He bloody did wax with soul gore seething, sword blood in waves boiled. So Beowulf is not quite alone. Wiglaf came to his aid. Young man, wooden shield and a spear against a dragon. Certainly not the best of odds. And again, Beowulf has a weapon just fall to pieces as he's trying to fight through it. He's too strong for any of his arms. So, let's see how this actually shapes up, because we are now at part 37, The Fatal Struggle, Beowulf's Last Moments. Then I heard that at need of the king of the people, the upstanding earlman exhibited prowess, vigor, and courage as suited his nature. He his head did not guard, but the high-minded liegeman's hand was consumed when he succored his kinsman. So he struck the strife-bringing strange-comer lower, earl thane in armour, that in went the weapon, gleaming and plated, that gan the fire later to lessen. The liege lord himself then retained his consciousness, brandished his war-knife, battle-sharp, bitter, that he bare on his armour. The Vader lord cut the worm in the middle. They had felled the enemy. Life drove out then puissant prowess. The pair had destroyed him. The land chiefs related, so a liegeman should prove him, a thaneman when needed. To the prince 'twas the last of his era of conquest, by his own great achievements, the latest of world deeds. The wound then began, which the earth-dwelling dragon erstwhile had wrought him, to burn and to swell. As soon then discovered that bitterest bale woe in his bosom was raging, poison within. The atheling advanced then, that along by the wall he prudent of spirit might sit on a settle. He saw the giant work, how arches of stone strengthened with pillars, the earth hall eternal, inward supported. Then the long worthy liegeman laved with his hand the far famous chieftain, gory from sword edge, refreshing the face of his friend lord and ruler. Sated with battle, unbinding his helmet, Beowulf answered. Of his injury spake he, his wound that was fatal. He was fully aware he had lived his allotted life days enjoying the pleasures of earth. Then past was entirely his measure of days. Death very near. My son, I would give now my battle equipments, had any of heirs been after me granted. Along of my body, this people I governed 50 of winters. No king mong my neighbours dared to encounter me with comrades in battle, try me with terror. The time to be ordered, I bided at home, mine own kept fitly, sought me no snares, swore me not many oaths in injustice. Joy over all this I'm able to have, though ill with my death wounds. Hence the ruler of earthmen need not charge me with the killing of kinsmen, when cometh my life out forth from my body. Fare thou with haste now, to behold the hoard neath the hoar-greyest stone. Well-loved Beowulf, now the worm is a-lying, sore wounded sleepeth, diseased of his treasure. Go thou in haste, that treasures of old I, gold wealth may gaze on. Together, see lying the ether-bright jewels be easier able, having the heap of hoard gems to yield my life and the land folk whom long I had governed. And brings us to the end of part 37. So they slew the dragon, but at what cost? And as Beowulf sits there, knowing that his end is coming, knowing that he has no heirs left behind him. So there won't be any fight among those, but there is some sadness there, some grief that there won't be any of his line left. Part 38. Wiglaf plunders the dragon's den, and Beowulf's death. Then heard I that Wisthand's son very quickly, these words being uttered, heeded his liege lord, wounded and war-sick, went in his armour, his well-woven ring-mail, neath the roof of the barrow. Then the trusty retainer, treasure gems many, victorious saw. When the seat he came near to, gold treasure sparkling spread on the bottom, wonder on the wall, and the worm creature's cavern, the ancient dawn flyers' vessels a-standing. Cups of the ancients, of cleansers bereaven, robbers of their ornaments, there were helmets in numbers, old and rust-eaten, arm bracelets many, artfully woven. Wealth can easily gold on the sea bottom turn into vanity. Each one of earthmen arm him who pleaseth, and he saw there lying an all-golden banner, high o'er the hoard, of hand wonders greatest, linked with lassets. A light from it sparkled, that the floor of the cavern he was able to look on, to examine the jewels. Sight of the dragon. Not any was offered, but edge off carried him. Then I heard that the hero the hoard treasure plundered, the giant work ancient reeved in the cavern, bare on his bosom the beakers and platters, as he himself would fain have it, and took off the standard. The brightest of beacons, the bill had erst injured, its edge was of iron, the old ruler's weapon. Him who long had watched as ward of the jewels, who fired terror carried hot for the treasure, rolling in battle, in middlemost darkness, till murdered he perished. The messenger hastened, not loth to return, hurried by jewels. Curiosity urged him, if excellent mooded, alive he should find the lord of the Vaders, mortally wounded, at the place where he left him. Mid the jewels he found then the famous old chieftain, his liege lord beloved, at his life's end gory. He thereupon gan to lave him with water, till the point of his word pierced his breast hoard. Beowulf spake. The gold gems he noticed, the old one in sorrow. For the jewels I look on, thanks do I utter, for all to the ruler, wielder of worship, with words of devotion. The Lord everlasting, that he let me see such treasures. Gain for my people ere death overtook me. Since I've bartered the aged life to me granted for treasure of jewels, attend ye henceforward the wants of the war thanes. I can wait here no longer. The battle famed bid ye build them a grave hill, bright when I'm burned at the brim current's limit, as a memory mark to the men I have governed. Aloft it shall tower on Whale's Ness uprising, that earls of the ocean hereafter may call it Beowulf's Barrow. Those who barks ever dashing from a distance shall drive o'er the darkness of waters. The bold-mooded troop lord took from his neck then the ring that was golden, gave to his liegeman, the youthful war hero, his gold-flashing helmet. His collar and war mail bade him well to enjoy them. Thou art latest left of the line of our kindred, a Vigmunding people, weird, hath oft carried all of my kinsmen to the Creator's glory. Earls in their vigour shall after them fare. 'Twas the aged liege lord's last spoken word in his musings of spirit, ere he mounted the fire. The battle waves burning from his bosom departed, his soul to seek the sainted one's glory. And so, there goes Beowulf, the biggest of bros, the baddest of bros. But age weakens us all, and you know what? I can think of worse ways than to go out taking a dragon with you. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And having a young hero to pass on the torch. Part 39. The Dead Foes. Wiglaf's Bitter Taunts. How much further do we have, actually? We're pushing a little tight on time here. Yeah, Age and a Dragon is cooler than just Age. That is totally fair. It had woefully chanced, then the youthful retainer, to behold on earth the most ardent beloved, at his life day's limit, lying there helpless. The slayer, too, lay there, of life all bereaved. Horrible earth drake, harassed with sorrow, the round, twisted monster was permitted no longer to govern the ring hordes, but edges of war swords mightily seized him, battle sharp, sturdy, leavings of hammers, that still from his wounds the flyer from farland fell to the earth. Hard by his horde house hopped he at midnight, not air through the air, nor exulting in jewels, suffered them to see him, but he sank then to earthward, through the hero chief's handwork. I heard sure it throve then, but few in the land of liegemen of valor, though of every achievement bold he had proved him, to run 'gainst the breath of the venomous scather, or the whole of the treasure to trouble with hand blows, if he, watching, had found the ward of the hoard hall, on the barrow abiding. Beowulf's part of the treasure of jewels was paid for with death. Each of the twain had attained to the end of life so unlasting, not long was the time till the tardy at battle returned from the thicket. The timid truce breakers, 10 altogether, who durst not before play with the lances, in the prince of the people's pressing emergency, but blushing with shame, with shields they partook him, with arms and armor where the old one was lying. They gazed upon Wiglaf. He was sitting exhausted, but going fighter, not far from the shoulders of the lord of the people, would rouse him with water. No whit did it help him, though he hoped for it keenly. He was able on earth not at all in the leader, life to retain, and no wise to alter. The will of the wielder, the world ruler's power, would govern the actions of each one of heroes. As yet he is doing, from the young one forthwith then, good grim-worded greeting he got for him quickly, whose courage had failed him. Wiglaf discoursed then. Weohstan, his son, sad-mooded hero, looked on the hated. He whose soothness will utter can say that the liege lord who gave you the jewels, the ornament armor wherein ye are standing, when on ale bench often he offered to hall men, helmet and byrnie, the prince to his liegemen, as best upon earth he was able to find him, that he wildly wasted his war gear undoubtedly, when battle o'ertook him, the troop king no need had to glory in comrades. Yet God permitted him, victory wielder with weapon unaided, himself to avenge. When vigor was needed, I, life protection but little was able to give him in battle, and I, 'gan notwithstanding helping my kinsman, my strength overtaxing, he waxed the weaker. When with weapon I smote on my mortal opponent, the fire less strongly flamed from his bosom. Too few of protectors came round the king at the critical moment. Now must ornament taking and weapon bestowing, home joyance all, cease for your kindred. Food for the people, each of your warriors must needs be bereaved of rights that he holdeth in landed possessions, when faraway nobles shall learn of your leaving your lord so basely. The dastardly deed, death is more pleasant to every earlman than infamous life is. So, Wiglaf is pissed. Wiglaf is all sorts of righteously angry at the 10 that had run away as they creeped back in after the battle. And understandable. The kid was not going to have any part of it. Going to give them a little bit of a tongue lashing there. And if that's all they get, they should be happy for it. Now, part 40. We're nearing the end now. Then he charged that the battle be announced at the hedge, up o'er the cliff edge, where the earl troopers bided. The whole of the morning, mood wretched sat them, bearers of battle shields, both things expecting, the end of his lifetime and the coming again of the liege lord beloved. Little reserved he of news that was known, he who the Ness cliff did travel, but he truly discoursed to all that could hear him. Now the free-giving friend lord of the folk of the Vaders, the folk prince of Gateman, is fast in his deathbed. By the deeds of the dragon in deathbed abideth, along with him lieth his life-taking foeman. Slain with knife wounds, he was wholly unable to injure at all the ill-planning monster with bite of his sword edge. Wiglaf is sitting, offspring of Vistan, up over Beowulf. Earl or another whose end day hath reached him, head watch holdeth o'er heroes unliving, for friend and for foeman. The folk now expecteth a season of strife, when the death of the folk king to Frankmen and Frisians in far lands is published. The war-headed hatred waxed warm against the Huguemen, when Hygelac came with an army of vessels faring to Friesland, where the Frankmen in battle humbled him, and bravely with overmight accomplished that the mail-clad warrior must sink in battle. Fell mid his folk troop no fret gems presented, the eighthling to earlmen. I was denied us. Merowing's mercy. The men of the Swedelands, for truth, trust I but little, but widely 'twas known that near Ravenswood Ongenthau sundered Haithson the Hraithling from life joys. When for pride overweening the war Silfings first did seek the Gateman with savage intentions, early did Othaire's age-laden father, old and terrible, give blow in requital. Killing the sea king, the queen mother rescued, the old one his consort deprived of her gold, Onella's mother, and Othaire's also. And then followed the feud-nursing foemen till hardly, reaved of their ruler, they Ravenswood have entered. Then, with vast numbered forces, he assaulted the remnant, weary with wounds, woe often promised, the livelong night, the sad-hearted war troop. Said he at morning would kill them with edges of weapons, some on the gallows for glee of the fowls, aid come after the anxious in spirit, at dawn of the day, after Hygelac's bugle, the trumpet's sound heard they, when the good one proceeded, and faring followed the flower of the troopers. So all this part was a messenger carrying word that Beowulf had fallen, but he did kill the dragon, but he's honestly terrified of what is to come next, because they'd had an era of basically peace for 50 years when Beowulf was king, because no one was going to mess with the biggest of bros. Alright, part 41. The Messenger's Retrospect. The blood-stained trace of Swedes and Gatemen, the death rush of warmen, widely was noticed. How the folks with each other feud did awaken, the worthy one went then with well-beloved comrades. Old and dejected to go to the fastness, Ongentheow Earl upward then turned him, of Hygelac's battle he'd heard on inquiry. The exultant one's prowess despaired of resistance, with earls of the ocean to be able to struggle against sea-going sailors to save the hoard treasure. His wife and his children he fled then after thenceward, old neath the earth wall. Then was offered pursuance to the braves of the Swedemen, the banner to Hygelac. They fared then forth o'er the field of protection. When the Hraithling heroes hedgeward had thronged them, then with edges of irons was Ongentheow driven. The grey-haired to tarry, that the troop ruler had to suffer the power solely of Eofor. Wulf then wildly with weapon assaulted him, Wonred his son, then for swinge of the edges, the blood from his body burst out in currents. Forth neath his hair, he feared not, however, grey-headed Silfing, but speedily quitted the wasteland wound stroke. With worse exchange, when the king of the Thane troop thither did turn him, the wise-mooded son of Wonred was powerless to give him a return blow to the age-hoary man. But his head-shielding helmet first hewed he to pieces, that flecked with gore perforce he did totter. Fell to the earth, not fey was he yet then, but up did he spring through an edge, though an edge wound had reached him. Then Hygelac's vassal, valiant, dauntless, when his brother lay dead, made his broad-bladed weapon, giant sword ancient, defense of the giants. Bound o'er the shield wall, the folk prince succumbed then, shepherd of people, was pierced to the vitals. There many attendants who bound up his kinsman carried him quickly, when occasion was granted. That the place of the slain they were suffered to manage, this pending one hero plundered the other, his armor of iron for only the Hithiau ravished, his hard sword hilted, and helmet together. The old one's equipments he carried to Higelac. He the jewels received, and rewards mid the troopers graciously promised, and so did accomplish. The king of the Vaders requited the war rush. Hraethel's descendant went home he repaired him, to Eofor and Wulf with wide lavish treasures, to each of them granted 100,000 in land and rings wrought out of wire. None upon mid-earth needed to twit him with the gifts he gave them. When glory they conquered, and to Eofor then gave he his one only daughter, the honor of home as an earnest of favor. That's the feud and hatred, as we know 'twill happen. The anger of earthmen that earls of the Swedemen will visit on us, when they hear that our leader lifeless is lying, he who long time protected his horde and kingdom against hating assailers, who on the fall of the heroes defended of yore the deed mighty Sildings, did for the troopers what best did avail them. And further, moreover, hero deeds accomplished, now is haste most fitting, that the Lord of Liegemen we look upon yonder, and that one carry on journey to death pyre, who ring presents gave us. Not aught of it, all shall melt with the brave one. There's a mass of bright jewels, gold beyond measure, gruesomely purchased, and ending it all adornment rings too, bought with his life. These fire shall devour, flame shall cover, no earlman shall wear a jewel memento, nor beautiful virgin have on her neck rings to adorn her, but wretched in spirit, bereaved of gold gems, she shall oft with others be exiled and banished, since the leader of liegemen hath laughter forsaken, mirth and merriment, hence many a war spear, cold from the morning, shall be clutched in the fingers. Heaved in the hand, no harp music sound shall waken the warriors, but the wan-coated raven, fain over fey ones, freely shall gabble, shall say to the eagle how he sped in the eating, when the wolf, his companion, he plundered the slain. So the high-minded hero was rehearsing these stories, loathsome to hear. He lied as to few of weirds and of words. All the war troop arose then, neath the eagle's cape sadly betook them, weeping and woeful, the wonder to look at. They saw on the sand then, soulless a lying, his slaughter bed holding, him who rings had given them in days that were done. Then the death-bringing moment was come to the good one, that the king, very warlike, wielder of Vaders, with wonder death perished. First they beheld there a creature more wondrous, the worm on the field, in front of them lying, the foeman before them, the fire-spewing dragon, ghostly and grisly guest in his terrors, was scorched in the fire. As he lay there he measured 50 of feet, come forth in the night time to rejoice in the air, thereafter departing. To visit his den, he in death was then fastened. He would joy in no other earth-hollowed caverns. There stood round about him beakers and vessels, dishes were lying, and dear-valued weapons. With iron rust eaten, as in earth's mighty bosom, 1,000 of winters there they had rested. That mighty bequest then with magic was guarded, gold of the ancients, that earlmen, not any, the ring hall could touch, save ruling God only. Sooth king of victories gave whom he wished to, he is earth folk's protector, to open the treasure, e'en to such among mortals as seemed to him proper. So the end of the story is coming up. The messenger is given voice to all his fears and histories of what happens when other great kings have died, and how the vultures swoop in and try and make a mess of things. So, setting the stage there for what comes after Beowulf. And then the people that were up waiting to see the results come down and see the fallen king and see his fallen foe. And they wonder, man, that was a big dragon. Alright. Part 44, or 42, sorry. It's all Roman numerals. Wiglaf's sad story. The horde carried off. Then 'twas seen that the journey prospered him little, who wrongly within had the ornaments hidden. Down 'neath the wall the warden erst slaughtered some few of the folk troop. The feud then thereafter was hotly avenged. 'Tis a wonder where, when the strength-famous trooper has attained to the end of life days allotted, then no longer the man may remain with his kinsmen where mead cups are flowing. So to Beowulf happened when the ward of the barrow assaults he sought for, himself had no knowledge how his leaving this life was likely to happen. So to doomsay famous folk leaders down did call it with curses, who accomplished it there, that man should be ever of ill deeds convicted, confined in foul places, fastened in hell bonds, punished with plagues, who this world should e'er ravage. He cared not for gold, rather the wielder's favour preferred he first to get sight of. Wiglaf discoursed then, Wistan his son. Oft many an earlman, on one man's account, must sorrow endure. As to us, it hath happened, the liege lord beloved, we could little prevail on. Kingdom's keeper counselled to follow, not to go to the guardian of the gold hoard, but let him lie where he long was, live in his dwelling, till the end of the world. Meant we a destiny hard to endure, the hoard has been looked at, been gained very grimly. Too grievous the fate that the prince of the people pricked to come thither. I was therein, and all of it looked at, the building's equipments, since access was given me. Not kindly, at all entrance permitted, within, under earth wall, hastily seized I, and held in my hands a huge weighing burden. Of hoard treasures costly, hither out bear them, to my liege lord beloved. Life was yet in him, and consciousness also, the old one discoursed then, much and mournfully, commanded to greet you, bade that, remembering the deeds of your friend lord, ye built on the fire hill of corpses a lofty burial barrow, broad and far famous. As mid-world dwelling warriors he was widely most honoured. While he revelled in riches, let us rouse us and hasten again to see and seek for the treasure. The wonder 'neath wall, the way I will show you, that close ye may look at ring gems sufficient, and gold in abundance. But the buyer with promptness fully be fashioned, when forth we shall come, and lift we our lord then, where long he shall tarry. Well beloved warrior, 'neath the wielder's protection. Then the son of Wistan bade orders be given, mood valiant man, to many of heroes, holders of homesteads, that they hither from far, leaders of liegemen, should look for the good one, with wood for his pyre. The flames shall now swallow, the wan fire shall wax, the warrior's leader, whom the rain of the iron often abided. When, sturdily hurled, the storm of the arrows leaped o'er linden wall, the lance rendered service, furnished with feathers followed the arrow. Now the wise-mooded son of Wistan did summon the best of the braves from the band of the ruler, 7 together. 'Neath the enemy's roof he went with the 7. One of the heroes who fared at the front, a fire-blazing torchlight, bare in his hand. No lot then decided who that hoard should havoc, when hero earls saw it. Lying in the cavern, uncared for entirely, rusting to ruin, they rued then but little, that they hastily hence hauled out the treasure. The dear-valued jewels, the dragon eke pushed they, the worm o'er the wall, let the wave currents take him. The waters enwined the ward of the treasures, there wound in gold on a wain was uploaded, a mass unmeasured. The men leader off then, the hero hoary, to whale's nest was carried. So they've recovered the spoils from Beowulf's victory, and just shoved the dragon off a cliff, because don't need to give him a good funeral. And the rites are for Beowulf. Alright, now we have, I think, the last part coming up. Yep, the last. Part 43. The Burning of Beowulf. The folk of the gateman got him then ready. A pile on the earth, strong for the burning, behung with helmets, hero knights' targets, and bright shining burnies, as he begged they should have them. Then, wailing war heroes, their world-famous chieftain, their liege lord beloved, laid in the middle. The soldiers began then to make on the barrow the largest of dead fires. Dark o'er the vapor, the smoke cloud ascended. The sad roaring fire mingled with weeping. The wind roar subsided, till the building of bone it had broken to pieces. Hot in the heart, heavy in spirit, they, mood sad, lamented the men leader's ruin, and mournful measures the much grieving widow. The men of the Vaders made, accordingly, a hill on the height, high and extensive, of sea-going sailors to be seen from a distance, and the brave one's beacon built where the fire was, in 10 days' space, with a wall surrounded it, as wisest of world folk could most worthily plan it. They placed in the barrow rings and jewels, all such ornaments as erst in the treasure war-mooded men had won in possession. The earnings of earlmen to earth they entrusted, the gold to the dust, where yet it remaineth, as useless to mortals as in foregoing eras. Round the dead mound rode then the doughty in battle, bairns of all 12 of the chiefs of the people. More would they mourn, lament for their ruler, speak in measure, mention him with pleasure, weighed his worth and his warlike achievements mightily commended, as 'tis meet one praise his liege lord in words and love him in spirit. When forth from his body he fares to destruction, so lamented mourning the men of the gates, fond loving vassals, the fall of their lord. Said he was kindest of kings under heaven, gentlest of men, most winning of manner, friendliest to folk troops, and fondest of honor. The end. So, this has been Beowulf, an Anglo-Saxon epic poem, as translated by John Lesslie Hall. I have to say, I enjoyed this translation quite a lot. The first part was probably the better of the two halves, honestly, but that was mostly just due to the fact that that's where most of the story that we're already familiar with happened. And also, the first half had all of that delicious alliteration. I am a sucker for a string of 5-6 words in a row of good, solid alliteration. It is fantastic when that just comes together. And I was kind of sad to see there wasn't really any of that in the second half. Ah, well, we do what we can, right? So, this has been a bit of a shift from other things that we've read. Kind of reminds me a lot of when we were reading Le Morte d'Arthur. Although this is better put together, I should think. And yeah, you're right. This speaks very highly to the translator. He did a good job of arranging it such that it still felt like a poem. The alliteration helped there. There was a little bit of rhyme. There was some verse and some meter that were really well placed together. That is doubly impressive because the meter originally was not there in a modern sense. It was written in the early English, or the early Anglo-Saxon language, and it was definitely not recognizable as a poem as we would see it in the modern sense. So to transcribe it and still maintain the spirit of it without just direct translation and keep it as what we would see as just prose was really, really well done. And now, so after sitting through this, after having read this, I am called to think of all the, not only adaptations, but all the things that have been so obviously influenced and inspired by Beowulf. I mean, there's the obvious, the adaptations themselves, which run the gamut of quality, and of all sorts of media. I mentioned yesterday that Beowulf is a favorite of the visual novel media. It's been adapted multiple times in comic format just because it is such a good way to translate the story. Do a lot by showing rather than telling. And we see a lot of other things. There was Crichton's Eater of the Dead, which was rather obviously a retelling of the hunting of Grendel. There was the 13th Warrior. There's so many other things that aren't directly, obviously a Beowulf retelling. And it's cool to see how they tie back in. Certain plot points are caught up. And then also, it is nice to contrast the... Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. The ancient stories just follow through with it. They follow us through history. It may be that only the best ones do, and that's why they stick with us. It very well could be true. The masterpieces of the ancient world are retained and kept, or set aside in places of honor where they've been retold over and over through the years, and the pulp fiction of the time is left by the wayside. I totally understand that. But these sorts of stories are timeless. The hero's tale, which so many of these epics are, it resonates with audiences, ancient and modern both. It sort of catches you right in the feels. You want to root for the hero. You want to... You cringe and fear for them as they take a prideful stance, or whether the dragon comes through and you see doom descending. So yeah, it's really cool. It is interesting also to contrast this with other epics that we've either read or are aware of. The obvious comparisons are between the Odyssey and Beowulf, where we see Odysseus was continually prideful throughout. He's the same sort of larger-than-life figure that Beowulf was, but in his full of pride, he was in spite of the gods. Whereas with Beowulf, it was... I'm not sure how much of this is the translation was, but he was constantly humbling himself before God, giving things up to the fates. And so it was that contrast there also plays into how things will fall apart or fall together later on in the story. Odysseus obviously was spited by the gods and by Poseidon and was doomed to travel for 20 years before he could finally come home. Whereas Beowulf was the biggest of bros and nothing could go wrong until the very end. And that's also just a part of the storytelling. For Beowulf, this is very much just sort of the cultural epic, giving a figure, a historical figure, someone that's larger than life. And then on the Greek side, with Homer, he very much liked to give lessons in everything he wrote. And in Homer's case, it definitely was honor the gods, do good things, do great things, but don't get too big of a head on yourself, and honor your family, which that all came through very well in Homer's storytelling. And then that same sort of lesson giving isn't really present in Beowulf, although there are some lessons in such that Beowulf and those around him are upheld as models to follow after. So it's like, instead of don't do this, it's a, hey, be like this. Give good gifts. Don't be overly prideful. Don't be boastful, but like stand up for what you have. So it all is very interesting. And the different cultures have different ways to go about it. And I think we'll see the same thing if we come to another epic down the line. If we find a good retelling of Gilgamesh, which is on my short list, that'd be another thing to really look at and review and compare. So yeah, these are fun stories. And they're extra fun because I don't need to come up with crazy voices for a lot of them, because it's just narrated in natural voice for the most part, which is helpful when I'm overcoming a bit of a strain from doing very suspect voices for Wizard of Oz, how I decided to do the giant head voice or the witch voice or the monkey king voice, I'll never know, and I will probably forever regret. But despite that, I think it is good that we've come to shift gears a little bit. We have epics and histories and literature, prose, and things all over the place. Ooh, the Volsung Psalm is... Oh, man. So there are a lot of very, very good epics, but I do think we need to space things out and check ourselves, because that one in particular is going to take some time. I've seen a video, or an old black and white movie adaptation of that, and that ran like 6 hours. So, but all right, guys, I have kept us a little over long tonight. So, our next reading will be on Tuesday. I don't know yet what we'll be reading, but we will be in December, which means it is the holiday season. We have lots of selections, lots of options. So we'll probably be starting to get a little bit festive as we go through. There are some very good things and some things that are probably less good. And you know what? I'm here for all of them. All right, guys. With that, as always, thank you very, very much for joining us. If you have not yet, I encourage you to drop a like on the stream, maybe a subscription to the channel. Let us know... Let the algorithm know that we're doing some fun things around here. I'm not one to shy away from shilling. And then, until next time, I hope you have a wonderful night. And always think of something fun to read. So we're always open to suggestions around here. Alright, have a good night. Thank you very much. Bye now.